Hello and welcome back. I'm David Bianco. So we had a bit of an interview, I guess, with the president of MOFI / Music Direct, Jim Davis. We had a professional journalist asking the questions with some very detailed responses. Just a quick review of that next here on the Sound of Safe and Sound, Texas. Hello and welcome back. This is David Bianco. Thanks for joining me again. Well, MOFI President Jim Davis addressed the digital LP mastering controversy in a Q&A with Robert Harley, who is with the Absolute Sound. Now, the Absolute Sound is an online website and has a lot of equipment information and reviews and editorials. This is kind of an editorial group. The same Absolute Sound that hired Mr. Michael Fremer back in June, ironically. So there's an interesting tie-in here. The fact that Mr. Fremer himself wasn't the one who was granted this interview, or I'm not sure if this was honestly a live discussion or a set of questions submitted to MOFI and they decided which ones to answer. I don't know. I reached out to Mr. Harley and got no response, so I decided, I gave it 24 hours. I decided I would talk about it a bit. So we have a limited amount of questions, and we have it now from a serious journalist. Michael Fremer said we needed that, and he said that it would himself or a dozen others or whatever that he might recommend, and Mr. Harley may have been one of those since he's also with the Absolute Sound. So we are there. He gave his answers. I'm certainly not going to regurgitate all of his answers, but at a high level, he went from saying why did Mobile Fidelity decide to move to this process of DSD files, and Jim basically gave a pretty comprehensive answer, and at the end of the day it was, I think at the end of the day, this is better. We went through all this, we think it's better, and that's why we went this direction. And when did they start doing it? Well, that was already stated before. We knew that. Are any still mastered from tape, or did they all plan to be DSD? I think he indicated the last one was the David Crosby album, and that's going to be the last. So everything else is going to be from DSD. So we got that on the record. Clarify the precise process and signal chain for cutting a lacquer. So Jim Davis explains that and talks about how much more difficult it is to cut from analog directly and why that's really problematic in nature. And then why did they use DSD 64 on some titles versus DSD 256? It was a timing thing, the equipment that was out and available at the time, and it looks like they changed that in 2014 and upgraded to DSD 256. Fair enough, fair question. Talks about the limited quantity, limited number of copies that they make, and why do they do that, and he goes through an explanation of that between licensing and other reasons, technical reasons. And the last question was that the revelation of cutting from digital masters suggested that the advantages of a purely analog chain are imaginary. How do you reply to that line of thinking? And he kind of said, well, that's up to people to decide. That's going to be something that's battled in terms of digital versus analog, but that they believed firmly this was the best way. And so there's our interview. There's our big interview and our coming of age of information. And so, a few thoughts enter my mind. One, seemed like a relatively softball interview. It did draw out some new facts, and okay, that's fine. But I certainly would have had a few more questions, and I'm not saying that Mr. Harley did not submit these or ask these, but they certainly weren't answered and published. So let me be clear about that. But it really goes back to the issue of, if this is such a good process, and if it is so good, then why did you hide it? I don't know any other way to put it. As I've said before, I think they had a chance at educating people. I think there's more to this chain potentially than we might really know. Can you really edit DSD in any way, shape, or form directly? Do you have to transfer it in any way to PCM and back? I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying there are a lot of unanswered questions. But why weren't you more forthcoming initially with this when it was happening back in 2011, 2012, maybe in 2014 when you went to 256 and you say, hey, let's spill the beans. We've been using 64 and now we're really using the super top end and we're on the cutting edge of technology kind of thing. But no, 11 years passed by, 7 years passed by, and nothing. So I think I would have asked that question, because to me that's at the core of things in a way, because the respect for your customers I think is important, because they have brought you on this journey, and our allegiance to you when it was MFSL all these years and our expectations, and then to come out with a statement that basically says, yeah, we were vague, and people made a lot of assumptions, like as if we should have known better. And the truth is, shame on us for being that much of a group of people who believed in something that we believed that there would be honesty about it. I mean, that is a pretty low bar to me to expect. But I guess some might say business is business. And so once again, we learned that sometimes the customer isn't always number one. The customer is actually number two. Well, as if things didn't get peaked enough through that interview, I guess it percolated a few hours and Michael Fremer decided he'd put out a challenge. Quote, DSD is not transparent to the source, period. But I tell you what, I want to find the most anti-vinyl, pro-DSD person out there who is not a psycho and who lives in the New York area, and after a background check, I am going to invite that person to visit. And we will sit here and compare it all, and then that person can report back however they wish, or we can, to quote Bill Riley, do it live. Which made me wonder, if that person's going to go to Michael's place to do this test, I wonder if that person is going to require a background check on Michael. I mean, after all, they're going to spend some time together. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you would, please press the subscribe button, and that would help me a lot. And if you'd like and comment, that always is helpful, and I try to respond to your comments. And again, I really want to thank you for joining me. And until next time, good to see you, and thanks for joining me at the sound of Safe and Sound, Texas. Take care, everybody.